I believe I can fly. I believe I can touch the sky. I think about it every night and day.
Hello everyone, my name is Eric Domingo on Radio DePaul Sports, the student voice of DePaul Blue Demons, and this is my first official show on Radio DePaul Sports called Naismith News. Just to kind of give you guys a brief introduction to my show, this is, like I said, my first show, so I thought I'd tell you guys what I'm talking about. Basically, what I plan to do in this show is talk about NBA news, NBA history, and do a little fantasy tips for you guys. So, right now, I thought I'd talk about the games that happened yesterday, the Thunder versus Mavs, the Spurs versus Clippers, and then in my next segment, I talk about how those games affected the NBA fantasy world. Then, obviously, for all you NBA fans out there, you all know that yesterday was the NBA trade deadline. I talk about some of the trades I liked, didn't like, and then my last segment, I'm going to talk about the upcoming games that are going to be broadcasted tomorrow and and what I believe how players are gonna fare tomorrow. So let's jump right into this Thunder versus Mavs game where the Thunder won 104-89. The leaders in the game, Dirk Nowitzki for the Mavs, led the Mavs with 14 points, 4 rebounds. Tyson Chandler helped him out with 10 points and 13 rebounds. For the Oklahoma City Thunder, Russell Westbrook had 34 points and 10 assists. He had 5 rebounds as well. Serge Ibaka helped him out with 21 points, 22 rebounds, and 0 assists. Basically, this game was won by the Thunder because of energy. Energy, energy, energy. For you Oklahoma City fans out there, you all know that your team, when they're playing with a lot of energy, they're really tough to beat. Especially when they out-rebound a team 62-39, which they did to Dallas yesterday. And I have to start off with basically how I loved Russell Westbrook yesterday. He was just electrifying. He was all over the place. Going, kind of showing why he won, the All-Star MVP, playing with a lot of confidence, attacking the rim, getting his teammates involved. I just thought Russell Westbrook was the reason why they won this game. He was the MVP of this game, for sure. And kind of looking at Dallas, I was really surprised that Dallas, kind of came out struggling offensively. They shot 36.3% from the field, and they just couldn't buy a basket. No shots were going in. And usually in the NBA, when shots don't go in, you're going to lose a lot of games. Especially on the defensive side, Dallas didn't play that great of a defense. They allowed Oklahoma City to shoot 41.8% from the field, shoot 41.8%. Also, the Oklahoma City Thunder got to the line 26 times. Yeah, guys, it was just one of those games where the Thunder, they just looked scary. They were awesome. They did everything right. Unfortunately, in the game, Kevin Durant, left a little early with some foot problems. He changed his shoes twice because it seems like his right foot is not really feeling too great. So, we have to kind of keep our eye on Kevin Durant. But moving on to the next game, looking at the Spurs versus Clippers game, where the Clippers won 119-115. That was a really great game, guys. If you didn't see it, you should have saw it. There were highlight dunks. It was great basketball to watch because it's Spurs basketball. Tim Duncan led the way for the Spurs, 30 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 assists. Tony Parker helped him out with 21 points, 13 assists, and 3 rebounds. Crawford and Jordan were the leading scorers for the Clippers at 26 points. Crawford had 5 assists, and DeAndre Jordan had 18 rebounds. The thing in this game that I want to kind of highlight was that the Clippers played just like the Thunder. When the Thunder beat the Mavs, they just played with more energy than the Spurs. It seemed like the Spurs were able to get out in transition. They were able to, get the ball to DeAndre to make highlight dunks, especially when he dunked over Bellinelli. For all y'all that saw that, that was an amazing play. Very Jordan-esque. Michael Jordan, I'm referencing. And it was just great to watch. Exciting to watch if you're an LA Clipper fan. They just beat the Spurs the way the Spurs need to be, the only way you could beat the Spurs, which is running up and down the court on them. The Spurs like to play kind of a slow game, half-court game where they spread the ball around, post up Tim Duncan, run a lot of high pick and roll with Tony Parker, get shooters like Danny Green, Marco Bellinelli, and, Patty Mills involved, shooting from the corners. But the Spurs, they weren't as effective this game. But, in my opinion, I thought that this game was a lot closer than it should have been. DeAndre Jordan was a big reason why this game was close. He missed a ridiculous amount of free throws, which made the game really close. It's kind of leading the team, and upon leading the team in the West, Chris Paul is just doing great for them. He's assisting the ball, getting everybody involved, scoring well, and yeah, guys. But yeah, that's my overview of the game, the last 2 games from yesterday. This is Eric Domingo on Radio DePaul Sports, the soon voice of DePaul Blue Demons. I'll be right back in about 5 minutes. Another guy you need to start. I'm gonna stay in Oklahoma City. You have to start Serge Ibaka. Serge Ibaka had an outstanding game against the Mavericks with 21 points and 22 rebounds, and he's blossoming. With the trading of Kendrick Perkins to Utah, I look for Scotty Brooks to use Serge Ibaka more. And I mean more as in, as in defensive schemes, offensive schemes. And in my opinion, I thought that with Kendrick Perkins there in Oklahoma City, that the team, that it was kind of clustered down there in the paint. That Ibaka couldn't really do damage down there because Perkins took up a lot of space. Perkins is a pretty big guy. And Ibaka, it was just too much down there for Ibaka to work and, be the type of player he is, block shots. I look for Serge Ibaka's minutes to jump from 32.7 minutes this season to about 35. And something that I really noticed when looking at Ibaka's numbers in the last couple months is that whenever he played more than 35 minutes, whenever he's played more minutes than his average, he's averaging 16 points and 10.8 rebounds. Yeah, guys, I'm going to say that again. The last 2 months, when Serge Ibaka played more than 35 minutes, which is what I'm predicting that he's going to be playing in the second half of this season, he's averaging 16 points and 10.8 rebounds. So look for his numbers to skyrocket with his minutes going up. You can probably put money on that. Moving on to Dallas. I like Monte Ellis. If you have him on fantasy, you got to start him. He has to play for you. And the reason why Monte has to play for you is because he's leading the Mavericks in scoring at 19.5 points. The Mavericks play a high-octane game. They run up and down the floor. Monte Ellis is going to get his numbers, Unfortunately, he didn't do so great against the Thunder. He only had 7 points and 4 assists. And he scored 7 points in his last game. But don't let that scare you. Don't let that stop you from playing like Ellis. Players have those games. We've seen it. Not every 20-point scorer in the NBA is going to get 20 points a game. And I would say yesterday is a bad game. So just kind of wash that out if you're an Ellis fan, and start him for sure. Especially the reason why really highly recommend that you start Ellis is because Amari Stoudemire is now a Dallas Maverick, and how that kind of relates to Ellis is that Dirk Nowitzki is the quote-unquote best scorer on the team, franchise player. But Monte Ellis is the best scorer in terms of numbers, with Amari Stoudemire adding, height and, relief to Dirk. I see Rick Carlisle playing Amari Stoudemire more, which kind of sits Dirk, which I believe Dirk is going to sit more. Rick Carlisle's going to save Dirk for the playoffs, for that playoff push. And also kind of looking at the Dallas starting lineup, I'm not really sold on Chandler Parsons being, a scorer, a solid scorer that you can count on every game. Yeah, he's getting 15 a game, around that ish, but that's, I feel like that's pretty average among small forwards. I wouldn't say that he's, I wouldn't say that I would have Chandler Parsons on my fantasy team just for scoring or for other things, because really, unfortunately, that's really all you're getting out of Parsons, just scoring. And if you're a Dallas Maverick fan, Tyson Chandler and Rajon Rondo are not stat sheet stuffers. If you're looking for, scoring in particularly, I'm talking this in reference to scoring. Rondo is all around great player, and I'll get to him later. But Tyson Chandler, he's an up and down guy. He's really just kind of a grimy guy. Get his double digit rebounds. He'll barely make a double a game. So I wouldn't look to him as somebody to kind of count on if you're looking for scoring in your fantasy roster. But kind of looking, I keep talking about Ellis' scoring, but Ellis also does a great job in a lot of other areas. He's also a solid, setup guy. He's averaging 4.5 this season, and he's averaging about 2 steals a game, at 1.9. So that shows you that he's just not just giving you scoring. He's assisting the ball, stealing the ball, and if Dallas, makes a push in this Western Conference, they're currently in the 6th seed right now. I look for Ellis to be a major reason if they were to get home court advantage and make it into the top 3 seeds in the West. So if that happens, I expect his numbers to go up there. Again, I'm going to touch about Rajon Rondo. The next player I really highly recommend to start if you have him, and I'm sure this is kind of a given. You got to play Rajon Rondo. He's not going to give you scoring. If you're looking for a guy that's going to score for you in your fantasy team, Rajon Rondo is not your guy. I'll tell you that right now. Rajon Rondo, in this game, he only had 5 points, 6 assists, and 2 rebounds. And for the season, he's averaging around 8.7 points, 8.6 assists, and 6.2 rebounds. Rajon Rondo he gives you all the other stuff that you need. He kind of helps you fill the gaps in other places like rebounding, assists, steals. And that's why you gotta start him. You gotta have him too. I feel like if it comes down to, Monte Ellis versus Rajon Rondo, depending on your other players, if you have scoring forwards, I'd go Rajon Rondo. If you kind of have more rebounding big men like DeAndre and, someone like Dwight, for example, then I would say Ellis to get you scoring. But, Rondo is someone you got to definitely watch out for if you have him on your team, and use him wisely. Make sure when you're, picking and starting players that you're looking at what each player brings. You're not just looking at just scoring. Like I said earlier, if you're loaded in rebounding and blocks at the big man position, then start Ellis over Rondo. But if you are, have DeMarcus Cousins, a great scorer, big man scorer, and you have, someone like Paul Gasol that can score as well, then I'd probably start Rajon Rondo. You're going to have to start Rajon Rondo because he'll get you the assists. He'll get you the steals. The things that will kind of fill up a great fantasy team as a whole. Kind of going to the bad in the Oklahoma City Dallas, game. The bad fantasy players that you should probably, if you have them, you should. No, I don't know if I'd say let them go, but definitely bench them and keep a close eye on them. Especially this guy, Dion Waiters. Oh man, Dion Waiters. I'm so sad for Dion Waiters because he, is in a tough position now with the addition of DJ Augustine, Enes Kanter, Kyle Singler, and Steve Novak. And, that kind of takes away his opportunity to score, which is what Dion Waiters does. He scores the basketball. He's in isolation at the left wing kind of guy, and he just takes players on one-on-one. That's the type of guy he is. And that's why I would put him in the category of bad fantasy players. I have nothing against Dion Waiters as a person. I think he's a great, person. He did good stuff in Cleveland. He never had any problems that I'm aware of. But in terms of fantasy, he's definitely in my bad category. And he's really just one dimension. I look at him as kind of a one-dimensional guy. Kind of going back to the isolation thing. He just really scores for you. And since he's a volume shooter, he's taking a lot of shots. And unfortunately, this season, he's not making a lot of those shots. His field goal. I don't think Anthony Morrow is a type of guy, if you have him on your fantasy team, that you should really, rely on. Kind of like Waiters, he's an isolation guy. Shoots a lot of three-pointers. He's averaging 4 a game. But that's all he's really giving you. He's not really giving you too much else. And he seems to be in this weird kind of conundrum with Scotty Brooks because, he can score the basketball, but he's not really that great defensively. And Scotty Brooks is the type of coach that's really known for his defense. He loves players that plays defense. That's why Thabo Sefolosha played and got as many minutes as he did, started for the Oklahoma City Thunder. And you're seeing, other players take his place, other players like Perry Jones and, other guys like that just getting minutes just off defense. Unfortunately, Morrow, he's not getting as many minutes as I would have thought he would have, because I thought, the Thunder can really use a guy that could score and spread the floor, but for some reason, Scotty Brooks is not playing as much as I thought he would play, and the only thing I can think of is because of defense. So you probably won't get steals from him. You're not going to get rebounds for sure. So yeah, Morrow, bench him. And if you really dislike him, he's really not helping out your team, I say even just let him go. Now, another guy, kind of looking at the Dallas Mavericks team that you got to let go, if you have him, or bench him. I'm not going to tell you guys what to do, but, hopefully you take my advice, is Charlie Villanueva. Charlie Villanueva is a type of guy I think will regress as a player, on the Dallas Mavericks team. Kind of going back to what I said earlier about Amari Stoudemire. Amari Stoudemire on the Dallas Mavericks kind of limits guys like Charlie Villanueva's minutes, and you're gonna see these rotations, not just the Dallas Mavericks, but a lot of teams. The rotations get smaller, 7-8 man rotations, and Charlie Villanueva was definitely going to be on the bad end of those rotations. I know some people picked him up because he had a couple of 20-point games, but he's definitely playing decent, better than, I would have expected Charlie Villanueva would have played. And I see on fantasy that some people are picking him up, but you gotta let him go. I think he just was getting playing time for the Mavericks because, the Mavericks let go of Wright, who's on Phoenix now. But I looked for Charlie V in the near future to be in Rick Carlisle's doghouse and sitting on the bench. Another guy, I guess this is a grouping, guys, that you kind of have to let go or bench if you have them on your team, is Jose Barea and Raymond Felton. And I'm gonna start with Jose Barrera because I love Jose Barrera. I thought when the Mavericks won the championship, he was, the quote unquote MVP of that. He was awesome. But getting back to in terms of fantasy, the guy just hasn't been a great fantasy player this year. In the game against the Thunder, he only had 7 points in 14 minutes, and most of that was in garbage time. Kind of like I said earlier, when the Mavericks are probably going to shorten their rotation to about a 7-man rotation, trying to make a playoff push. It looks like the guard rotation, in my opinion, I feel like the guard rotation is going to be Rondo, Ellis, and Harris. They'll get a majority of that time, between those three. But, I want to live in the past. For all you Jose Barrera fans out there that loved him and think that he's going to add some fantasy value, I'm with you. But 2010, 2011, when they won the championship and he was averaging 9.5 points and about 20 minutes, that Jose Barrera is gone. And, you got to bench him or let him go if he's on your team. Another guy that I hate to say to bench or let go is Raymond Felton, because I was a huge Raymond Felton fan when he was on the New York Knicks and he was throwing oops at Tyson Chandler, and that's why I thought it was going to work in, Dallas for Raymond Felton. But unfortunately, the Dallas Mavericks have too many guards, and somebody, is not going to be able to play. And that guy that's not going to play is Raymond Felton. Raymond Felton, in this season, he has a lot of DMPs, and I know some people still have him on their squad because they're like me. I had Raymond Felton for a little bit. They want to think that he's gonna be the Raymond Felton in 2010 that averaged 17.1 points and 9 assists, but he's not anymore. He's older. He's a vet now. He has a lot of nagging injuries, and I look for him to kind of warm up the bench for the Dallas Mavericks. So yeah, those are the guys that I would sit and start. If you have them on your fantasy team. Again, guys, this is Eric Domingo on Radio DePaul Sports, doing voice of DePaul Blue Demons. I'm going to go to a commercial break. If you guys want to follow me on Twitter, you like what you're hearing, follow me on Twitter at Naismith News, Naismith, and follow me in my work on WordPress at chicagonaismithnews.wordpress.com. Same spelling. We'll be right back. Leonard. You definitely need to start him on your fantasy team. He's having a great year. Unfortunately, he started off the season, injured, and I believe it was because, it was the great work he did in the NBA Finals. But Kawhi Leonard is someone that you definitely need to start if you have him on your fantasy team. Play Kawhi Leonard. He is my second favorite player to watch behind Kevin Durant. Awesome guy. Awesome player. It's the Spurs' future, and he's definitely going to lead your future to the fantasy playoffs if you start him. The reason why I think Kawhi Leonard's a must start is because he's averaging around 31.9 minutes a game right now. But I look for that to go up a little more through, even though Pop is pretty conservative with players' minutes. Somewhere between 33 to 34 minutes, because, Spurs got to make a push for, a better seeding. They're near the bottom of the West in the playoff race. In terms of the playoff race, not bottom of the West, they'll never be in the bottom of the West ever, I don't think. But in terms of the playoff race, they're near the bottom. So I look for Pop to kind of play Kawhi more, rest Duncan more. So that gives Kawhi an opportunity to be a fantasy stud for you guys out there that have him. In the last 2 months when Kawhi played over his average of 31.9 minutes a game, he's averaging around 18.5 points and 9.4 rebounds. That's a near double-double, guys. So if you got Kawhi Leonard, start him. Another guy you need to start is Tony Parker, if you have him on your team. Great guy to have. He had a great game against the Clippers. We had 21 points, 13 assists. Kind of like I said earlier, Tim Duncan He's going to get a lot of rest. Ginobili, he's on the older side, has a history of injuries. And of the Spurs' quote-unquote big three, Tony Parker is probably the best fantasy guy for you, in my opinion. Tim Duncan, he's having a solid year, doing what Tim Duncan does. But as the playoffs near, Tim Duncan is definitely going to decrease in minutes. I see Popovich being really conservative with Tim Duncan because they know if they want to repeat, they want to beat, whatever team comes out in the East, they're going to need Tim Duncan to be healthy and ready to go. Another guy that you got to start, if you have him, staying at the Spurs and Clippers, is Chris Paul, obviously, right? Chris Paul has been a top 4 pick in fantasy forever. And he crushed it yesterday against the Spurs, 22 points, 16 assists. Chris Paul, he could just score in so many ways, guys. Like, he is one of my favorite guys to watch, point guards to watch, because I'm a small guy, that plays basketball, not professionally or even in college, but out there at X-Sport, I like to play basketball. And when I see Chris Paul out there, I kind of see myself. But unlike myself, Chris Paul just tears up people with his ability to just maneuver in the paint, score, with his floaters, drives, and mid-range shots. And it's just beautiful to watch. And then if he's not scoring, if he's not floating, using his floaters, and he's not shooting mid-range shots, he's dishing the ball out. He's been hovering around 10 assists for his career, ever since he was in New Orleans. But another guy that you need to start is DeAndre Jordan. Especially with Blake Griffin being out for 2 to 6 weeks, guys. I'm gonna say DeAndre Jordan's numbers again because he had such an amazing game. I want to say his numbers again. He had 26 points, 18 rebounds against the Spurs, the world champs, in a win. If you're looking for DeAndre Jordan to get you, free throws, he's not your guy because he was awful in free throws, especially yesterday when he attempted 25 and almost cost the Clippers a game. But going back to his fantasy value, he blocks shots, great blocking shots, and guards are looking for him. Chris Paul, Jamal Crawford, Austin Rivers, those guys, whenever DeAndre Jordan's in the game, they're looking to lob him the ball and let him do what he does, which is makes highlights. He's a highlight guy, He just exciting to watch, great fantasy player, can score, rebound, block shots, and he's definitely, a starter, if you have him on your team. Going to the bat, I'm gonna kind of get through this pretty quickly because I still gotta go through the NBA trade deadline. But going to the bat, Marco Bellinelli. Marco Bellinelli is a guy that you gotta let go, guys. I know he won the 3-point champion. I know he's the former 3-point champion, but he's not even giving you that much this year. He's averaging 3.5 3-pointers this season, and he's down from last year where he was averaging 3.7 threes a game. His minutes are not, are around 10, 15 minutes. Not really playing that much. Really just a scorer. Doesn't really set up guys very well. His assists are even down from last year. He's averaging 1.8 this season, but last year he was averaging 2.2, so he's got to go. Manu Ginobili is someone that's got to be benched or let go as well. Manu Ginobili, he's never been a really consistent fantasy player. Great guy in the playoffs, great guy to have in your locker room, but he's getting older, and kind of like Tim Duncan, he's got to be benched because Papa's going to save him for the playoffs. Looking at the Clippers, Blake Griffin is someone you got to bench. I would never let Blake Griffin go, but you got to bench him because of the staph infection. It's going to be out 2 to 6 weeks. I believe it's going to be 6 weeks. I think the Clippers can hold it down for Blake until he gets back and healthy. But, keep him on your bench. He's a solid double-double guy, one of the best power forwards in the league. Will get you 20-10 every night when he's healthy. But if you're looking to make a push for the fantasy playoffs, you gotta bench Blake, hoping that he comes back a little earlier. Spencer Hawes is another guy you gotta bench. Spencer Hawes is a guy you gotta bench because he is just not that great number-wise. Like, if you're looking for Spencer Hawes to score for you or even get three-pointers for you, he's not even really doing that. You know, he's averaging 6.4 points and 3.8 rebounds this season. And his three-point percentage is not even that great. You know, he's shooting around 25 to 30%. Not that great. And, you know, he's just getting minutes because of Blake Griffin. So for all you fantasy fans out there that thought that Spencer Hawes was going to be a gold mine, that he was going to produce for you, he just is not doing it for you. He's just not doing it this time. Now moving on to the NBA trade deadline. There was a lot of stuff going on in the NBA trade deadline. The biggest thing that I want to kind of talk about was the Goran Dragic to the Miami Heat. I really thought that it was a great move. Pat Riley did a great job in recruiting Goran Dragic. You know, and he didn't give up much to get Goran. You know, he only gave up Danny Granger, 2 first-round picks. So, you know, I thought it was a great move. They were really, you know, questionable about the point guard position. Mario Chalmers and Norris Cole weren't really scoring for him, weren't really producing. And Goran is a solid guard, averaging 16.2 points a game, 4.1 assists. And he's going to be a type of guy that can help you in your playoff push in the East. The Miami Heat are hanging, you know, in the middle of the East. But they'll probably stay there, you know, kind of looking at the team as a whole, especially with Chris Bosh and this infection that he has that was just announced today. The Heat are going to definitely have their struggles because Chris Bosh, you know, was leading the team in scoring. He was the guy with Dwayne Wade still questionable with his health. But Goran Dragic will definitely help this team, you know, make some noise. I also liked this Milwaukee Bucks trade where Michael Carter-Williams was traded there from the Philadelphia 76ers for, you know, Brandon Knight, Kendall Marshall. You know, and the Suns were in that deal as well. You know, Tyler Ennis, you know, was part of that deal. Miles Plumlee was part of the deal. They're not Bucks. But, you know, the big thing here is that I like that the Bucks got Michael Carter-Williams. I think him and Jason Kidd are gonna do great together. They're gonna be, you know, really great together. Michael Carter-Williams is a type of player that, you know, is almost like a Rajon Rondo. Jason Kidd averages around a triple-double, you know. And, you know, he's long, has a lot of talent. He was former Rookie of the Year. And, you know, if I had to make a prediction for next year's All-Star game, I would see Michael Carter-Williams wearing an Eastern Conference All-Star jersey as a Buck because I really think the ceiling is high for this kid. Unfortunately, Brandon Jennings, you know, is a great player as well. He was averaging, you know, a little more than 17 points for the team. And, you know, he should have, and a lot of people thought he should have been an All-Star this year. But, you know, it's, you know, the NBA is also a business league. The Bucks obviously saw something in Carter-Williams and had to let go of Brandon Knight to get him. And I don't mind the trade. So, yeah, keep just kind of moving through these trades here. I thought that the Reggie Jackson trade to the Pistons, you know, was another solid trade, good trade. I like Reggie Jackson. You know, when Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant weren't playing for the Oklahoma City Thunder, he did a great job, you know, and, you know, getting everybody involved, scoring the basketball. But it seems he wasn't happy there. His production seemed to have gone down when Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant came back. And that's to be expected. Russell Westbrook and Kevin Durant, they're going to get their shot attempts. But I feel like it's going to help Oklahoma City Thunder because they did get Enes Kanter, Steve Novak, and DJ Augustine in the deal. And I don't really get what Utah did here, by just picking up Perkins, and then there were reports that he's going to get let go, and I don't even know who Grant Jarrett is and Tibor Pleiss, but I think it benefits the Pistons because Brandon Jennings was out for the season. I think Reggie Jackson is going to really help the Pistons, make a playoff push. I think Oklahoma City is now a scary team in the West. I don't think they're going to win the championship, but they're definitely a better team than they once were with Enes Kanter, Steve Novak, and DJ Augustine and Kyle Singler. And, and some of the other small trades that kind of happened in the NBA were the Kings and Wizards swap point guards, Andre Miller and Raymond Sessions. The Sixers got JaVale McGee from the Nuggets. And the Pelicans got Ish Smith, and Oklahoma City Thunder got draft consideration. The New Orleans Pelicans got Ish Smith, and the Oklahoma City Thunder got draft considerations. But yeah, guys, kind of looking forward to what's happening this weekend. Tomorrow, Saturday, February 21st, there's a lot of great games. I love these games. I'm actually excited to watch them. Oklahoma City is playing Charlotte. New Orleans is playing Miami. Phoenix is at Chicago. Toronto at Houston. Sacramento at LA. For my predictions, guys, I think Oklahoma City is definitely gonna beat Charlotte there. They had a great game yesterday. The momentum will probably carry over. They're trying to make a push for a better seed than the 8th seed, and I look for Charlotte to be on the bad end of that. I think the Miami Heat are gonna win this game against the New Orleans Pelicans. I think Goran Dragic is gonna show why, he should have, he should have got a bigger He's gonna show why he deserves a big contract, and hopefully Miami will be able to give it to him. So he's gonna come out aggressive in this game. Him and D Wade are gonna come out and play. I don't know if Chris Bosh is gonna be there, but the Pelicans are, still having their problems. Anthony Davis is injured, missed the All-Star game when he dunked and hurt his shoulder. So I don't know if he'll play in this game, but I do know that Miami Heat has enough to beat this team. And this game that I'm definitely gonna watch is the Chicago versus Phoenix game. I look for Chicago to win this game because they lost to Phoenix in the last time they met. Houston and Toronto. I look for Houston to win that game. James Harden's on a tear, still leading the NBA in scoring. Toronto, they're second in the East right now, but they're not doing. I don't think they have enough to beat the Houston Rockets. I look for the Rockets to kind of jump on them. LA Clippers in Sacramento. This is going to be a big game as well. George Karl showing what he has left in the tank. The Clippers just came off a win against the world champs, so this should be an interesting game. I predict the Clippers to be the winners of this game because the momentum. It's going to be George Karl's first game. I feel like he's still getting to know the team. And the fantasy studs to kind of look for in tomorrow's games. I would definitely, the best players to watch out for are Pau Gasol in the Chicago and Phoenix game, because I look for Pau Gasol to come out and really just assert himself offensively, rebound, block shots. So if you got Pau Gasol, start him. James Harden in the Toronto game, he's leading the NBA in scoring, and I believe he's going to do that again in the Toronto game. He's going to be the leading scorer. The Clippers, if you got DeAndre Jordan, play him. Play him. Because Blake Griffin, like I said before, he's going to be gone for a while, and DeAndre Jordan's going to get a lot of those minutes. In Miami, this would be a good time to see, if Goran Dragic is all-star worthy. Now that he's in the East, will he be an All-Star next year if he stays with the team in the Eastern Conference. It's not that hard to become an All-Star in the Eastern Conference nowadays anyway. But, I think Goran Dragic's going to come out tomorrow, play a great game, to show everyone that he is a very talented player, and I look for him to lead Miami in that win. But there's the bad players that I would say, you got to keep an eye, like I said earlier with Kevin Durant earlier. You're going to have to keep an eye on Kevin Durant this Charlotte game. I'd say start him if you have him, but definitely, watch it. And the Pelicans, Davis is still injured, so you're definitely going to have to bench him as well. Phoenix, looking at Phoenix, Bledsoe is probably, his numbers are going to go down a little bit. He's going to try to gel with Brandon Knight. So, keep an eye out on Bledsoe. I'd say, that's a guy you kind of have to watch out for. And the Sacramento Kings, you got to keep an eye on DeMarcus Cousins, guys. You're going to have to, I don't know if his numbers are going to go up, but if I had to make a prediction, I think his numbers are going to regress a little bit just because he's in a new system with George Karl, and he's still going to have to figure some stuff out. But yeah, guys, this is Eric Domingo on Radio DePaul Sports, the student voice of DePaul Blue Demons. This is Naismith News. Thank you guys for listening. Follow me on Twitter at Naismith News. See you guys next Friday.